Welcome to Bite Size Rando. My name is Didier Kirby. Today, we're going to be talking about the fastest ways to get to the two main destinations on this overworld screen. And that means we're going to be talking about how to get to Sahasrahla over here, and also over to Eastern Palace here. Now this screen is a little bit interesting because, of course, we can come from this direction, from the left side of the screen, but if we have the flute, we also have the option of fluting to 5, which puts us here. And then if we go north one screen, we'll end up in the same screen, but this time we'll be coming from the lower right-hand corner. So we'll be comparing these two options in various time comparisons. So let's switch over to those and find out which are the fastest routes. The first question we're going to answer is, if you're fluting and you're on the flute screen, if you want to get to Sahasrahla, should you go to flute spot number 4 or should you go to flute spot number 5? So we're going to be comparing flute spot number 4 on the left and flute spot on the 5 on the right. On the top, we're not going to have the boots, and on the bottom, we are going to have the boots. I'm going to have these videos sped up since there's quite a lot of them, and when we do have the boots, I am going to also assume that you have the use of a sword. That is going to become very relevant because I'm going to make use of the super speed glitch, the spin speed glitch. So by releasing a spin and then pressing A 1 frame after your release, and then coming off a set of stairs, you'll be able to move much faster than normal, and I'll use that to good effect in both of these routes here. And you can see from these time comparisons that in both cases, with or without boots, you'll want to flute to flute spot number 5 to get to Sahasrahla. So definitely that is going to be the fastest. And I should also note that when you flute to flute spot number 5, you want to take this middle set of stairs. I did time it, and this was faster than going all the way to the left. Even though you have to climb up 2 sets of stairs here, that is going to be faster than going out of your way and making the detour to the left. And that is going to be true whether you have the boots or not. So make sure you go that way when you flute to 5 to get Saha. Okay, next up we're going to be tackling a similar question. So this time we're still trying to get to Sahasrahla, but this time we're going to do so from a save and quit. And of course from a save and quit, we're already going to start at Link's house. So basically the question is it worth it to still flute to 5, since going from 5 is faster if you flute, or is it faster to just walk from Link's house, because that way you don't have to wait the extra time for the flute transition. So let's see which one of these routes is going to be the fastest. So fluting to 5, again, we're going to take the same routes as before, and you'll find that, interestingly enough, this time the comparisons are much, much closer. So we see that in the case without the boots, fluting to 5 does win out slightly by about half a second, but with the boots, it actually wins out a little bit if you just save and quit and go to Saha directly without fluting to 5. But I will say these timing comparisons are all within about half a second, so I will say if you just want to go with your preference about what is easier to execute, that is totally fine, or alternatively what is easier to remember, because half a second really isn't much, and there is some RNG involved in these screens. For example, dodging this Octo Rock when you don't have the boots and a sword, you might get hit here and that will cost you like half a second. And also how good you are at activating these spin speeds when you have the boots and the sword can definitely play a factor in how fast these routes are. And I will say this route here, coming from the flute spot number 5, is going to be a little bit riskier because this Octo Rock here, if you have bad RNG, can get in the way, whereas on the left-hand side, that is usually not as much of an issue. So you can try and practice that and see which one works best for you, but in all cases, it is going to be about the same whether you want to flute to 5 or not. Okay, we're going to switch gears a bit now and talk about how to get to Eastern Palace. Now, if you're coming from the lower left corner of this overworld screen, you have 3 different options about how to get to Eastern Palace. You can go up this set of stairs here, or you can go up the middle set of stairs, which is right here, and that'll eventually lead to the same place. Or, alternatively, if you have the Power Glove, you can go over all the way to the right and lift this boulder here, and then climb up this set of stairs, and this will also lead you to Eastern Palace. So which one of these is going to be the fastest? Let's look and find out. Alright, so we have all 3 routes compared here, and on the top 3 we are not going to have the boots, and on the bottom 3 we are going to have the boots. We'll say some of these boots videos are going to be relatively tricky to execute because optimally you'll retain your spin speed through this enemy by kind of juking around the enemy and then going over, and that can be very tricky to pull off. So I will say that is very difficult to execute optimally, but that is going to be the fastest way. And we'll see that even with that tricky execution, the rightmost route is actually going to win out with boots, which is much easier, and the right route is also going to win out even if you don't have the boots. So if you have the power gloves, you'll definitely want to go all the way to the right and lift this boulder no matter what, and then you'll see that the middle route is actually going to be the slowest in both cases as well, so you never want to go there if you're starting from the left. So again, if you have the glove, just go all the way to the right and then lift this boulder, and if you don't have the glove, then just stick to this path on the left side. Now, if you have the flute and the glove, then I think it's pretty intuitive and easy to see that the fastest way to get to Eastern Palace is to flute to this screen, flute to 5, and then use your glove to lift this boulder here and then walk up this way, and that is definitely going to be the shortest path to Eastern Palace. But if you don't have the glove, then you can still flute to 5, of course, but you won't be able to lift this rock. So if you flute to 5, you're going to have to go all the way left and walk up this middle pathway to get to Eastern Palace. So let's look at some timing comparisons to see whether that's worth it over fluting to 4 instead. Okay, so here we have this set of timing comparisons. We're going to be comparing fluting to 4 versus fluting up to 5, and in all of these cases, we're not going to have the glove to pick up this boulder here. Otherwise, we would in both cases, whether you're fluting to 5, 4, or 5, because that is going to be faster. But we're not going to have a glove, so we're just going to test with the flute. And on the bottom two, we are going to have access to the boots and the sword. Something I will note is as you are walking up all these stairs, optimally you'll want to be pumping, so you'll be alternating from diagonally up left and diagonally up right, and that will actually help you move faster regardless of whether you have the boots and are using super speed or not. It will help you move up faster, and you'll see that I actually use that here to be able to beat the cycle of this guard. So if you don't do that pumping trick, you won't be able to get through here without getting hit by that guard. So doing pumping can actually be pretty relevant in this section of this screen in particular. But anyways, you'll see in the time comparison that it's not really close. When you're fluting and you want to get to Eastern Palace without a glove, you'll definitely want to flute to 5, and it's going to work out to be maybe around 6 or so seconds faster. So whether you have the glove or not, if you're starting from the flute screen and you want to get to Eastern Palace, definitely always flute to number 5. And now we're going to be looking at the same thing, except this time, instead of being on this flute screen, we're going to be doing it from a save and quit. So basically, are we going to have the same result or not? Since from a save and quit, of course, again, we start at Link's house, so if we want to flute to 5, we're going to have to spend some extra time, whereas if we just go and dash, we won't have to. So we'll see if this plays out any differently, but the route is going to be the same besides the fact that we're starting from a save and quit instead of a flute. And you should already be able to see something a little bit interesting here, which is that if you have the boots, this time it is slower to flute to 5. So if you have the flute, it's going to be about a second slower to flute to flute spot number 5 if you don't have the glove. Whereas if you don't have the boots, looks like it still is a little bit faster to go to the flute spot number 5. So this one is a little bit interesting and unfortunately a little bit harder to remember. If you don't have the glove, then it depends on whether you have the boots or not, if you're starting from a save and quit and going to Eastern Palace. So if you don't have the boots, then you still want to flute to 5, but if you do have the boots, then you probably want to start at Link's house. And again, these are relatively close, so you can also just choose one based on your preference, but these are the timings that I came up with. Now, before we recap these timing comparisons, I did want to cover one additional extra topic, and that is, oftentimes when you make a trip to Sahasrahla, you'll also want to go to Eastern Palace in the same trip because you're already here and the walk from Sahasrahla to Eastern Palace is going to be a little bit shorter than having to go all the way from Link's house again, of course. But you could also want to put this off because, for example, you might not have a bow to clear Eastern Palace completely. Of course, in normal modes, Eastern Palace is going to require the bow to complete. Now, things get a little bit interesting if you have the flute and the glove, because at that point you can say, well, I'm just going to do Sahasrahla and not worry about Eastern Palace, because if I ever want to go to Eastern Palace, I can just flute to flute spot number 5, and then, as we said, go up here and pick up the glove pick up the boulder using your glove, and then get to Eastern Palace really quickly that way. But the real question is, how much time, if any, does this lose you over walking straight from Saha to Eastern Palace? Because, of course, walking from Saha to Eastern Palace we know is pretty fast, but it also seems relatively fast to flute to 5 and then walk up to Eastern Palace. So basically, what is the time difference between these two? Let's go look and find out. Okay, so here is that timing comparison. On the left side, we're going to just walk straight from Saha or dash straight from Saha to Eastern Palace. And on the right two videos, we are instead going to flute to 5 and see how long that takes, assuming we have the flute and the glove to get to Eastern Palace. And you'll see that it's not immediately obvious which one of these is faster, but as we get closer, we'll be able to tell that it looks like in both cases, it is faster to just walk from Saha, so you are going to lose a little bit of time if you have to flute to Eastern Palace in a separate trip. It looks like, to be more specific, you're going to lose about 5 seconds without the boots, and you're going to lose about 6 seconds with the boots. So it is going to be a little bit of a time loss if you do split up Sahasrahla and Eastern Palace and have to make another trip using the flute. Not the biggest deal in the world, because again, 5 seconds is not that much, but it is going to be a little bit of a cost, so take that into consideration the next time you're making these routing decisions. Okay, I know we went over a lot of different timing comparisons today, so let's try and recap to make things a little bit easier to remember. First thing to remember is which one of these 3 paths to take when you're on this screen. And the first easiest rule to remember is if you're ever trying to get to Eastern Palace and you have the glove, you always want to lift this boulder and go up these stairs, and that applies no matter where you're coming from on this screen. Now, in all the other situations, which is either you don't have a glove to get to Eastern Palace, or you're just trying to get to Sahasrahla, if you came from the right side of the screen, because you fluted to 5, then you're going to take this set of stairs, and if you instead came from the left side of the screen, because you're coming from Link's house, then you're going to take the left set of stairs. The next rule to remember is if you're ever on the flute screen and you're trying to get to either Saha or Eastern Palace, always flute to 5. It's never faster to flute to 4. And this applies no matter what your equipment loadout is. So it doesn't matter whether you have the boots or not, even if you don't have the glove, always fluting to 5 is going to be fastest. Now the part that's a little bit harder to remember is if you're starting from a save and quit. Now of course you're always going to want to start at Link's house because that is going to be the fastest way to either walk or to get fluted away by the duck. And if you're in the situation and you have the flute and the glove and you're trying to get to Eastern Palace, then obviously I think it's pretty intuitive that you're going to want to flute to 5 and then go up and lift this boulder because that is really fast to get to Eastern Palace. So definitely use this if you have the option. Where things get a little bit more complicated is if you're trying to go to either Sahasrahla or you're trying to get to Eastern Palace and you don't have the glove to lift this boulder. Now, of course, you can try these different routes for yourself and see which ones you prefer, because the overall time difference is not actually that great. But if you just go by the timing comparisons that we saw earlier in this video, what you're going to want to do from a save and quit to Link's house is going to depend on whether you have the boots or not. So if you don't have the boots, then you're always going to want to flute 5 in this case, and that is regardless of whether you're going to Saha or whether you're going to Eastern Palace without the glove, you're going to want to flute 5 if you don't have the boots. Now, if you do have the boots, then you're not going to want to flute 5. Instead, you're just going to want to start dashing over. And if you think about this a little bit, it kind of intuitively makes sense that it would be this case because, you know, if you think about it, if you don't have the boots, then using the flute is going to be maybe a little bit faster because you can't walk as fast over Eastern Palace, so using the flute here gets you a little bit more, whereas if you do have the boots, you're giving up more if you flute away because you could just start dashing immediately and that is going to be a little bit faster. So that is kind of my intuitive way to remember, but whatever works for you to remember, and of course remember that in this case from a save and quit getting to Saha or from a save and quit getting to Eastern Palace without the glove, the timings are really not that much different. As we saw from the earlier timing comparisons, the most it was different was about a half second or maybe a second at most. So if you can't remember on the fly in the heat of the moment, that's totally okay. But hopefully the other rules that I stated earlier are a little bit easier to remember because those are the ones that are going to be a little bit more of a difference. So hopefully this helps you out in your next run, and thanks for watching.